audience is here. All of the lovely people are here. But mostly this is all about the people at home staying safe and being good. So if you'll just stand by for my introduction, and that'll be your cue to begin. Thank you for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together for Newark's Prince of Gospel, Joshua Nelson.
How I got over, how I made it over. My soul back in wonder, how I made it over. How I got over, how I made it over. You know my soul, go back and wonder how I made it over. Tell me how I made it over, Lord. Had a mighty hard time. You know my soul, go back and wonder how I made it over. Soon as I can see Jesus, man, it died for me. Man, that bled and suffered hard on Calvary. And I want to thank him for how he brought me. Thank God for how he taught me. Thank my God how he kept me. Thank him because he never left me. And I want to thank him for the whole time religion. Thank him for the heavenly vision. I'm a Johnny heavenly choir. Shout and never get tired. I'm gonna sing glory, hallelujah. Shout my trouble over. Oh, I wanna thank you for being so good to me. Tell me how I made it over. Had a mighty hard time. But you know my soul, go back and wonder how I made it over. Jerusalem. I'm gonna walk the streets of gold. It's in the homeland of the soul. I'm gonna view the host in white. They've been traveling day and night, coming up from every nation. They're on their way to that great coronation, coming from the north, south, east, and west. They're on their way to a land of rest. We gonna join the heavenly choir, shouting up and never get tired. I'm gonna sing glory, hallelujah. Shout my troubles over. Oh, somebody ought to thank him for being so good to me. I want to thank him this evening. I want to thank the Lord this evening. I want to thank him for Neil Rocker. I want to thank him for being a good leader. I want to thank him. Thank him. Thank him. Oh, I want to thank him. Been my rock in a weary land. He been a shelter in a storm. I want to thank him. Thank him. Thank him. Thank him. Thank God. I want to thank him. Thank him. Thank God for being. God been so good. So good. So good to Lord me, the North family. Yeah.
Please give a warm welcome to His Eminence, Cardinal Joseph William Tobin of the Newark Archdiocese.
Friends, we gather tonight in the name of God, who has created all human beings equal in rights, duties, and dignity, and who has called them to live together as brothers and sisters, to fill the earth, and to make known the values of goodness, love, and peace. We gather in the name of innocent human life that God has forbidden to kill, affirming that whoever kills a person is like one who kills the whole of humanity, and that whoever saves a person is like one who saves the whole of humanity. We gather in the name of the poor, the destitute, and the unjust dead whose names must be spoken. In the name of orphans, widows, refugees, and those exiled from their homes and countries. In the names of victims of war, persecution, and injustice. In the name of prisoners and those tortured anywhere without distinction. We gather in the name of peoples who have lost their security, peace, and the possibility of living together, becoming victims of destruction and calamity. We gather in the name of human society that embraces all human beings, unites them, and renders them equal. We gather in the name of a nation torn apart by policies of extremism and the rhetoric of division, by systems of unrestrained profit, or by hateful ideology that manipulates the future of men and women. We gather in the name of freedom that God gives to all human beings, creating them free and setting them apart by this gift. We gather in the name of justice and mercy, the foundations of prosperity and the cornerstone of faith. We gather in the name of all persons of goodwill in every part of this great city, and we pray. Beloved Creator, we need your blessed presence in troubled times. We thank you for the abundant blessings you've given us in raising up good and generous leaders for our city. Anoint again your servant, the Honorable Rasbaraka, with the oil of gladness and the spirit of wisdom. Inspire a testimony of unity among the members of the City Council, administrators, city employees, first responders, citizen leaders, and all who labor for our city. You have told us what is good and what you require of us, only to do justice and to love goodness and to walk humbly with you, our God. May this evening enlighten our hearts and rekindle our dreams. To you be glory forever, and let God's people answer, Amen.
Now, please welcome Newark Public Schools Board Member Adorian Murray Thomas.
It was April of 1970, and in these United States of America, Newark was the Mecca of revolution, resistance, and rebellion. For while the 60s had stolen Martin, Medgar, and Malcolm, the thirst for freedom lived on, and our city was giving birth to new heirs in the struggle for liberation. And so, in the spring of 1970, while the Beatles were singing Let It Be, we armed ourselves with books and other forms of ammunition and danced and protested in dashikis and afros to the Motown sound, because James Brown told us we were super bad, that we had soul power, and we believed him. As we scoured through the residue left from the flames of 1967, we found beauty in the ashes. The war cry had already been sung, and their labor bore fruit to a new generation of artists, educators, and disruptors, led by leaders like poet, scholar, and activist Amiri Baraka. Coalitions like the Committee for Unified Newark and the Black and Puerto Rican Convention paved the way for monumental feats like the election of Newark's first Black mayor, Mayor Kenneth Gibson. And because God always works with the long term in mind, on the 9th day of April of that same year, our warrior mother in the movement, Miss Amina Baraka, gave birth to yet another mayor, Newark's 40th mayor, the Honorable Ras J. Baraka. As a Black boy growing up in the South Ward of Newark, he refused to see himself through the limited veil of white supremacy, but instead saw himself and the Black and brown people around him in the same way the ancestors saw us, as powerful, brilliant, royal, and beautiful. No stranger to the struggle, he would become an educator, organizer, a proud father, and would ultimately run for office in the city he called home. He fought tirelessly for a seat at the table, and when that table became too small, he built his own and made one big enough for all of us. I stand here before you today as a daughter of that table, a first-generation Guyanese American, the child of an immigrant father and a mother who was a Newark public school teacher. I am the granddaughter of farmers and sharecroppers and formerly enslaved people, a people whose stories stretch from the cotton fields of South Carolina to the sugarcane fields of South America. Unfortunately, like many children in this country, I too lost my father at a young age to gun violence. So in college, I created She Wins, a leadership and mentoring organization for girls like me, homicide survivors, girls who lost parents, siblings, or loved ones to violence, and for any other girl in Newark who wants to use her voice to create change in her community. Like many other young people in Newark doing the work, Mayor Baraka saw me. He saw this little black girl born on the number blocks who was skeptical of politics but committed to doing the work, know that at his table there was room enough for all of us and that together we could win. And that's exactly what I did. Last year, at the age of 23, I made history and became the youngest woman ever elected to serve on the largest school district in the state of New Jersey, the Newark School Board. But that's just who Mayor Baraka is. In a society often dependent on the labor of black women, but reluctant to make space for them, this mayor, our mayor, sees the strength in all women and in the next generation of young leaders. Locking arms with other women trailblazers, like the mother City Council President Mildred Crump, it is no surprise that through his service, Mayor Baraka would continue to make room for everyone and for women. Under his leadership, Councilwoman LaMonica McIver became the youngest woman ever elected to the City Council. Shakira McKnight, that's right. Shakira McKnight is the youngest person to run a department in City Hall. And my own fellow board member, Vice President Dawn Haynes, is the first hijab-wearing Muslima elected to the Newark School Board. And so, on today, we welcome a mayor who chooses to see all of us in the great city of Newark for who we are, a people of power, promise, and unshakable pride. A mayor who, not just through his words, but through his actions, says to every Newarker, whether you on Broadway, Bergen Street, up west, or down neck, I see you. To the youth who attend his book clubs and leadership breakfasts, or the more than 3,000 students employed every year by One Stop, Mayor Baraka says, I see you. To the single moms and working families trying to navigate virtual learning, the mayor and his team helped create citywide remote learning pods, saying to every working parent, I see you. To the virtual crowds tuned in for his Friday Facebook Lives and daily updates for fellowship, information, and inspiration. To the essential workers putting their lives at risk every day to serve, provide, and protect in a city where by the grace of God, corona rates are down and graduation rates are up. Mayor Baraka says, look, I can't speak for what's happening at the White House, but in this house, I see you. To the intergenerational coalition of agitators and activists, to the over 10,000 peaceful protesters who marched in Newark for George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and so many other countless names, Mayor Baraka says, I see you. A los hijos y las familias indocumentados que vengan a Newark por ser una ciudad santuario. To the undocumented children and families who come to Newark because it is a sanctuary city. Or the immigrants who hail from all parts of Africa, the Caribbean, and South America for a better life. To the Boricuas and Dominicanos and other members of our Latinx family who call Newark home. A ti, Mayor Baraka les dice, aquí están seguros, son bienvenidos y los vemos. Here, you are safe, you are welcome, and I see you. And so on today, as we celebrate the 2020 State of the City, I invite you to join me in saying to our mayor, we see you, we trust you, and we believe in you. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor and pleasure to present to you a leader in the movement, a son of Newark, a man who literally takes no days off, and who has built a table big enough for all of us. Your mayor, our mayor, Newark's mayor, the Honorable Mayor Ras J. Baraka.
Before I begin, I would like to observe a moment of silence for the Newark residents we've lost this year to COVID-19, and particularly the 7 police officers that we lost here in the city of Newark. Madam President Crump, the entire Municipal Council, Councilman Amador, Councilman Gonzalez, Councilman McCullum, Councilwoman McGyver, Councilwoman Osborne, Councilman James, Councilman Quintana, and Councilman Ramos. To all of my directors of every department who work to execute all that we imagine and envision, to every single employee that works for the people of our great city, from the fire department to DPW, from vital statistics to crossing guards, from planning and zoning office to code enforcers. Thank you. We thank you for the often thankless and difficult work you do every day to make our lives better. And to all of the elected and appointed officials here and from around the state, we thank you for your partnership and your presence, particularly our Essex County legislative delegation. And we thank more than all the incredible and resilient residents of this great city. We are Newark, Newark stronger, Newark leading, and as Ken Gibson would say, Newark getting there first. Finally, it took this country to get to its darkest moment for the stars to shine the brightest. We, Newark, are one of those stars, and it's the light from the work that we have engaged in over the years that has made us stand out. It is our light now that shines brightest in the middle of this world pandemic. Our light shines still in the face of deep systemic racism as the world watched as the knee of white supremacy choked the life out of George Floyd. Our light shone bright as cities burned and the deep pains of inequity burst into chaos in America's living rooms. Our light shone bright as we found ways to stay afloat, to hold on to one another, as we watched our institutions come together, our neighbors deliver food to each other, make and distribute masks, support our frontline workers, rescue our elders and the most vulnerable. Newark stood strong, and I might add, is getting stronger, even in the face of incredible odds, and because of that, Newark is leading. On March 14th, Newark recorded its first case of COVID-19. The first 2 months of this virus, we were hit hard, physically, emotionally, psychologically. We never would have expected the toll that this virus would take on our lives and our community, a community of predominantly Black, brown, and immigrant residents, over 70% renting and no real room to quarantine or social distance. A community without robust access to primary care physicians and that suffer disproportionately from the pre-existing illnesses that exacerbate the outcome of COVID-19. A community of proud essential workers and laborers. All of these things made April 2020 one of the most challenging years we ever recorded in this city's history. We were averaging 200 to 300 positive cases a day, with a 68% positivity rate. Our death toll began reaching scary proportions. We were in New Jersey, the second hardest hit state in the country, and in Newark, that rapidly moved to the top in the number of cases per day and deaths in the state. Our children and families began struggling for food and wondering how to pay their rent as jobs began closing. The emotional toll began to wear down on us all as we stayed away from each other and sheltered in place. Our children lost contact with each other, and schools became virtual. Fear and confusion led on social media, and economically, businesses were hurting. Some still are, and have suffered irrecoverable damage. The city budget was not exempt as well. Tax revenue slowed or stopped in some cases altogether. Some of our employees began getting sick, and our police officers, 7 of them, passed. We had to act and act swiftly, consistently, without trepidation, and with clear data. The Department of Public Safety, along with the Department of Health and Community Wellness, began helping us map and track the virus throughout our community. The Department of Health began investigating these cases. We organized and trained city employees, Newark Public School employees, and students with the help of Rutgers Newark, and prepared at least 200 contact tracers. We began setting up testing and now have at least 13 permanent testing sites in the city. We were the first city possibly in the country to initiate walk-up testing sites, as half of our residents do not own a car. We started pop-up testing sites in neighborhoods that were difficult to test or where cases seemed to be rising. We began testing all of our homeless population and seniors with the help and partnership of the Newark Housing Authority. We began purchasing PPE for our employees and later for the city residents to distribute. We organized the Mask Up campaign to limit the spread of the virus, and in the very beginning, we limited public gatherings, instituted a curfew, closed businesses at 8, and then only allowed essential businesses to open up. We signed an executive order for everyone to shelter in place, and my favorite, we developed Be Still Mondays to relieve pressure off some of our essential workers. Not only that, we put a moratorium on eviction and rent increases. We extended time for payment of taxes, water bills, and removed penalties and fees. We put money together for rent relief for residents and gave grants to local businesses, even home-based businesses. We raised money for arts organizations and nonprofits. And represented residents who were being forced out in the middle of this pandemic. We stood up 2 hotels for safe quarantine space and used one of them to house over 300 homeless individuals. And with the help of Newark Public Schools, we delivered over 2 million meals and provided virtual space for parents that had to go to work while their children engaged in remote learning. We reorganized the city's leaders to meet the challenges of COVID-19 and met virtually twice a day, almost every day for 7 months, and are still going. Our Interfaith Alliance held virtual prayer sessions every single night and fasted every Tuesday and are still going strong. In the middle of this, we managed to still replace 15,000 lead service lines. And while other cities and private industry began cutting workers, jobs, we managed to save city workers from layoffs and furloughs and orchestrated a bond deal that saved the city an additional $14 million. That is Newark stronger. That is Newark leading. Look at this chart. It is clear that we have come a long way from despair and fear. We have not only dramatically reduced the positivity rate of COVID-19 in our city, we have managed to flatten it altogether. In fact, the reproductivity rate in Newark is less than 1%. Which is an indicator of how well you have controlled the spread. This is what they call a gold standard, and this is Newark stronger, Newark leading. But I want us to be clear. This virus is pernicious and stubborn. We are not in the clear yet. We have to maintain our fight, be vigilant and consistent. Look out for our neighbors and our children. Wear your mask, wash your hands, practice social distancing, get tested, and work to preserve our city, not put it in harm's way. Why is Newark stronger? Why is Newark leading? Let's start with this. I grew up in a city of bricks. I grew up in a city of bricks.
I see a thriving city that's going to set precedents that other cities are going to follow, and it's already happening.
We're used to the story of shots. We're used to the stories of corruption. But today we're selling you something different. We're selling you a story of a city that's on a comeback.
Really, from the onset of COVID, we followed the mayor's mission, which was to educate residents, inform them, and keep them safe.
I've seen the city come together in a way that it probably has never come together before.
We've managed to maintain our workforce through hiring freezes, spending freezes, and promotion freezes.
The biggest accomplishment to us was the lead service line replacement program that continued to exceed expectation.
And actually the food program is very innovative, where we distributed over 1 million meals to the city. We've also done gift cards. We gave away about 10,000 gift cards to city residents. Most people thought, well, I'm sure 30, 40, 50% of this population are COVID positive. Turned out not to be the case, and I believe it was a direct result due to the fact that early on, at the mayor's direction, we were able to work together and get these individuals into a safe environment.
The city as a whole had a plan and continued to improve that plan and let them know there was resources available to assist and help them.
Particularly in a time that's trying to divide us, we need people that are courageous enough to bring us together no matter what the cost to their own personal selves may be.
I've seen teachers, parents, first responders, neighbors, elderly, restaurants, everybody bound together to try to make the best out of the situation and try to survive as a community.
When he got on and he talking to residents via social media every single day.
If you had a job and the people aren't wearing a mask, say something to your boss.
And giving them information and actually leading them and telling them what's going on and giving them updates on infection rates.
If more cities would follow in the leadership of Mayor Raj, the response overall to this pandemic would have been better.
Our desire for self-repair, need to move forward, and propensity to win has to be a collective focus. We fall down together, and then we get up together, and we move forward together.
Newark stronger, Newark leading, Newark stronger and leading.
Newark es fuerte.
Newark stronger.
Newark es fuerte.
Newark leading.
Newark leading.
Newark mais forte, Newark liderando. Newark mais forte e liderando.
Newark stronger, Newark leading, Newark stronger and leading.
After years of fighting in the streets and courts, we stood up a civilian complaint review board with subpoena power. And despite the court's ruling, and with the help of Assemblywoman McKnight and every legislator that believes in freedom, we will have what we fought for. We created the city's first paper cooperative managed and owned by Newark residents. We managed to create an office to give people free legal services, created laws around affordable housing, developed a commission to deal with equity. We raised city workers' pay to at least $15 an hour and took over once privatized services, developed stronger relationships between community and police. We figured out how to arrest less people and still watch crime drop. We declared Newark a safe and welcoming city to immigrants, no matter their nationality or language. We passed local laws against criminalizing them. We pushed back against the madness of this president, and yeah, we took our school system back from the state. We helped to create and advance small black and brown businesses to get them bonding capacity, help them win contracts and do business with the city. We hired hundreds of formerly incarcerated residents. We helped to push for voting rights for those on probation and parole that can now vote in this November election. We stood with our undocumented community to fight for them to get driver's licenses and created municipal IDs. We developed strategies to increase employment for residents at anchor institutions, got them to spend more of their money with local businesses. We stood up a task force to pilot universal basic income to push for state and national policy. We reduced unemployment, made the city safer than it's been in decades, and at the same time, we dealt with a $93 million deficit. This was probably the most difficult time I had as mayor. I watched Newarkers perish from this new coronavirus and the world explode calling for change, reconciliation, and repair. But even before that in Newark, we were faced with a serious and grave problem. Lead was leaching from homeowners' pipes into the drinking water. And I watched people twist my words, challenge my integrity. I watched pundits attack people that I know work hard for this city to keep our water safe and drinkable. I endured a multi-million-dollar campaign to discredit me, this city, and many thought even hoped that this was the end, that we could never fix this. It was major, as internally we had to think about what we could have done better, make changes, and at the same time, work with lightning speed to find answers, a cure. I didn't have the luxury of finger-pointing or academic diatribes. I had to get us to a solution quick, even quicker than we anticipated. And I believe, by the grace of God, we have done exactly that. It is safe to say that our corrosion control is working. As we have been saying for years now, and only a year after we received $120 million with the help of Essex County Executive Joe DiVincenzo, we are in the last leg of the race to replace every single lead service line in this city. And while many cities here in New Jersey and around the country are trying to figure this out, Newark is leading the way. And if all goes well, by spring of next year, we will be able to report that we will be done. In fact, the group that we have been in constant battle with in and out of court had this to say recently on NJ.com. More importantly, since January, the city has tested over 2,000 children for lead, and have exceeded HUD's lead abatement program in homes, so much so that we received an additional $5.6 million to continue our progress. This is really the most prevalent way that children come in contact with lead in their homes, and lead-based paint and dust. And as you can see, we have been abating more and more homes each year, and we have the largest abatement program in the state. Listen, not all storms come to destroy you. Some come to pave the way. Not all difficulties are meant to crush you. Some come to force you to be stronger, to force you to lead, to force you to open your eyes. In fact, we have been able to train and put more than 60 Newark residents to work replacing these lines. We awarded 14 contracts totaling almost $130 million, of which an estimated $37 million of those dollars were dedicated to minority and women-owned businesses. And at the end of August, close to $15 million have already been awarded to these businesses, and almost $4 million to MWBEs that are right here from Newark, New Jersey. We've invested over $200 million in water infrastructure since 2014. And this does not include the $120 million we are now investing in replacing every lead service line in the city. Since I took office, we have increased the annual investment in the water department by 382%. While around the country, we witnessed justifiable anger and outrage over systemic racism that soon spiraled into chaos and violence, of indelible scenes of police cruisers running into crowds of protesters, rubber bullets and tear canisters used against unarmed protesters, even in the nation's capital, to make room for a photo op. We witnessed armed militia gun down residents, police precincts burning, and military personnel snatch people off the streets. These were dark and dangerous scenes that most Americans watched in horror and disbelief. But I am proud of my city, of the residents here, the organizers, the Clergy Alliance, the activists who knew that the headline would have read "Newark burns again" instead of "Thousands march for justice for George Floyd and an end to systemic racism." I am also incredibly proud of our police department. They demonstrated deep restraint and a desire to continue to mend the relationships with this community, not exacerbate them. This is not by happenstance. This came with ongoing and steady work under the Department of Public Safety, where our director, Anthony Ambrose, and recently retired Chief of Police Darnell Henry has done a phenomenal job to reduce crime and fight to reform a system whose history was littered with very basic and consistent violation of our rights. They came into a difficult, even impossible situation with a force considerably downsized through layoffs, and almost 200 officers out on some form of leave, an intractable crime problem that went up and down. They immediately bought into the idea of police reform and expedited efforts to comply, even go beyond the consent decree. They began making officers accountable, not just for arrests, but for interacting with the community. As a result, our interaction with the community and touches with residents are up, but our complaints are down, and so is crime. I believe that our efforts to partner with not just every police agency and intelligence unit in the state helped us sustain our numbers, but our unfettered and growing relationship with community-based organizations, alternative police strategies, and building community empathy and trust. The Newark Community Street Team, the Newark Street Academy, the Newark Anti-Violence Coalition, Equal Justice USA, West Ward Victims Outreach, the Hub, and all other organizations affiliated with the Brick City Peace Collective, from Beth Israel to UMD&J. Our collective work down this path has resulted in incredible outcomes. The South Ward, for example, last year experienced the largest drop in violent crime in decades. The numbers are clear. In a 4-year period, from 2015 to 2019, we witnessed a 31% decrease in overall crime. We entered office with 112 homicides and ended 2019 with 51, the lowest murder rate since 1961. And during the pandemic, this year, it's okay, we, along with most major cities in the country, experienced a spike in crime and violence, but Newark managed to endure it and push back. Just look at our January to September numbers from previous years and the same time last year. This is still way too high, and the work we are doing must increase and be more directed. We have to find more resources to fund alternative strategies to policing and community-based efforts. We have begun strategizing with the Department of Public Works and the Police Division to begin to identify the areas where we can improve city service around illegal dumping, garbage collection, and abandoned properties that will help make neighborhoods safer. Police officers are beginning to take quality of life complaints and are even assisting the Department of Engineering in counting streetlights that are out to report as it adds to overall safety of our community. We are uniting our efforts around Brick City Peace Collective and received the commitment from the state for an additional $1 million to develop and expand community strategies around victim services, conflict resolution, mediation, and violence prevention. But what is more important is that while in most of our major cities, people are debating the issue of defunding the police, in Newark, we actually have a plan. This is something that we have been doing before this became popular. We've already used police funding to hire social workers. We've already used police funding and personnel to address homelessness and drug addiction through our Hope One van, not arrests. We already use police resources to help fund alternative strategies to help reduce violence, but this was not enough. This moment that we're in calls for us to quicken our pace and expand our strategy. And as a result, we created the Office of Violence Prevention and Trauma Recovery, based on the idea that I walked into the office with in 2014, that violence is a public health issue. We are centering all of our alternative strategies under one roof. We are expanding our programs beyond parts of the South and West Ward. We are lifting up the idea of trauma recovery and are intervening and interrupting trauma, conflict, and reducing victims and perpetrators alike, which most often are one and the same. If we create less violence, the need to over-police our neighborhoods disappear. And as a result, we continue to fund the programs and systems that promote complete wellness and health for our communities and for our families. The police become a part of an overall community-based strategy to reduce violence and crime, and not the answer itself. But what is more compelling is our work around these efforts with the community. In 2010, we had 857 citizen complaints. Now we are at 271. Excessive force complaints dropped from 88 to 16. The cost of our lawsuits dropped from over $1.3 million in 2010 to $51,000 in 2019. And since June 2019, the Newark Police Division had more than 2,000 business checks, 2,000 citizen contacts that did not involve a police action, 200 youth engagements that did not involve a police action, and attended 200 more community meetings that did not involve a police action. We have community police roundtables and trauma circles. We had new policies and training before the mass protests and use of force, de-escalation, implicit bias, and LGBTQ sensitivity. And we recently added the Ashley Amendment, which instructs our officers to contact advocates of the LGBTQ community when they have issues identifying or dealing properly with LGBTQ victims. Unfortunately, this does not mean we will never have issues in our city or times when things go desperately wrong. What it does mean, however, is that we will deal with it and we will work with our community to make sure justice is even-handed and that it is not blind, but that sees the inequities in our society and addresses them until we live in a place where the language someone speaks or the color of their skin or the God they pray to or the person they choose to love does not condemn them to inhumanity. As a result of the city's improved situation and improved financial condition, Moody's revised the city's bond rating 2 times, once from negative to positive, and again from Baa1 to Baa2. And I hear people trying to downplay this, but this is a huge deal. In 2010, we were in financial distress. In 2012, we had a state monitor come in. Today, we control our own finances. In 2014, our financial issues grew to well over $100 million. It means we have changed the trajectory. Our work helped us to buy city buildings back that we sold to the county and leased back in prior years. It allowed us to bond, to get new equipment, and do much needed capital improvement. It made it easier for us to partner with the county to get $120 million to replace our lead service lines. This was all made possible because of the great work that is happening in our tax division and in the Department of Finance. We are collecting more property taxes and from residents and businesses alike. The growing development and the growing businesses that choose Newark means more revenue. But more importantly, our special tax collection for payroll and parking and hotels have increased from $54 million in 2014 to $92 million in 2019. We collected $37.5 million more dollars. Why? Because of timely billing, efficiency, enforcement, and collaboration with the state of New Jersey on sharing of information, and the great work Juanita Jordan is doing under the direction of Danielle Smith and our finance director. And this work, along with Darlene Tate and the Office of Budget, carried us through these uncertain financial times. In fact, Newark did not have to furlough staff, and Moody's maintained the city's positive outlook. The city refinanced its $100 million obligation bonds and managed to save $14 million over a 2-year period that will help us recover faster and keep delivering services to our residents. We've changed the narrative of our city. We've changed the narrative of our city. We're attracting businesses and development to this town. Even during the pandemic, we're still building, still developing. The groundbreaking, finally, of the old Kruger-Scott Mansion into a live workplace is incredible and proof that we are still scoring touchdowns. When I entered office in 2014 with no balanced budget and a financial gap that seemed insurmountable, my first priority was to stop the city from bleeding money, stop our tax base from eroding, plug our deficit, hire more police, drive murder down, buy equipment, collect garbage, pay people more wages, or at least have a contract, invest in our infrastructure, and turn this place around. And we worked hard. We worked hard in the Department of Economic and Housing Development, in the Department of Finance, in the Budget Office, in the Business Administrator's Office, and all over the city to cut waste, become efficient, raise revenue, and start this engine again. And not only did we do that, we've begun to push our equity agenda that is beginning to take hold, from co-ops to affordable housing. In the Office of Tenant Legal Services, in a short period of time, 572 people have received some form of legal services and 207 received actual legal representation. And that was in 2019. Even during this crisis, we have still represented residents, keeping people from being thrown out on the streets in the worst time this generation has seen. And to go further, in 2014, we handled some 3,500 requests for service, and in 2019, 9,256. And take a look at the number of properties by year that we have in fact registered since 2016 when we began this process. And since 2018, our registration has increased some 516%, from 520 to 4,531. We are working. This accounts for over 5,000 units or 5,000 families. That means we have stabilized more families' rent, allowed many to stay in their homes, and given many more a fighting chance to use more of their income on other necessities besides their rent. And because of tax abatements in 2019, we have created over 1,000 units. 770 are affordable units. 10 buildings rehabbed, 3 buildings for adaptive reuse, and created 1,133 construction jobs and up to 2,000 permanent jobs. And an affordable housing trust fund that has $796,770 added to it, and over $22,000 in our school trust fund. In fact, on March 5th, 2020, I got to stand with Lieutenant Governor Sheila Oliver, the Region 2 Administrator of HUD, Council members Osborne and MacGyver on the grounds of Garden Spires. We remember this place because so much that went on there. Even elected officials camping out there because the conditions were so deplorable. We were able to take this slumlord to court, as we do so many others across this city. And with the help of the Murphy administration, our state legislative delegation that was led by Senator Rice on this project, and the private sector, we were able to get some $200 million of investment into this development to rehab 600 units and keep them affordable at the same time. And a few weeks before that, I stood with the Lieutenant Governor once again, the New Jersey Economic Development Authority, New Jersey Housing Mortgage Finance Agency, and St. Barnabas. They were awarded funding to build 70 units of affordable housing on Bergen Street at 20, 40, and 60% of the area median income. This is the first of its kind in the city where we are tying health and wellness to housing. In fact, in 2015, we started putting more affordable units online altogether. We built some 3,514 affordable units, and this is outside of our inclusionary zoning ordinance. Of all the units built in the Central Ward, 50% of those units are affordable. There are 481 units under construction in the South Ward right now, and over 90% of those units will be affordable. And recently, we just announced an additional $5.2 million to further the work of building affordable units in every single ward. There will be 13 developments that comprise of 302 affordable housing units with home funds. They range from new 2- and 3-family homes to the renovation of vacant apartment buildings and new construction of apartment buildings, to the conversion of manufacturing plants into a 7-story loft, a residential building. 9 of the 13 developments are being built by minority and women developers. 9 of the 13. Presently, we have approximately $5.7 billion of construction in the pipeline. $5.7 billion. This number is consistently increasing, even in the middle of the worst pandemic since 1918. In fact, at the city's auction, we sold city property to the tune of $7 million. In terms of industrial space right now, we have about 1,853,362 square feet under construction, and are estimating 2,532,000 coming in the next couple of years. At Invest Newark, which was formerly known as NCEDC, and with the help of the city, they began repurposing and rebranding to introduce a land bank and some new timely initiative that reflect collective movement. Besides the capital fund for Newark-based contractors and subcontractors, they also created a Newark paper co-op that is already open for business, made up of Newark residents that will cooperatively own and operate the enterprise. We have marched a long way from 2014. We have marched a long way from 2014. We are stable, moving forward, getting stronger, and of course, leading the way. We have come a long way, but we have an even longer way to go to get us to the place of equity where we need to be. We need more affordable units. We need to protect the units we have and work diligently to make sure that those units are fit enough for us to put our own families in. It's not enough to advocate we keep housing. We must keep housing that's decent. We have to work hard to uplift and develop entire sectors of our community that have not been invested in decades, that are rotting with decay and deep and unchallenged poverty. Places we ignore, places many of us claim to fight for but have never visited, where CRA has purposely missed, where the majority of our abandoned properties, lots, illegal dumping, and unfortunately, crime exists. In fact, there is a correlation between areas that are left underdeveloped and crime. And if we intend to go to the next level in this city, this is where we must spend our time, our resources, and our energy. It affects our tax distribution. It affects our tax base, our social service costs, homelessness, drug addiction, homicide, and aggravated assault rates. It's the reality our children grapple with as they try to make sense out of their growing appetite for success, that is, if school is working properly, and the reality of the despair they are being fed on their way to and from school. This is why we need a land bank. This is why we need a land trust. We have to repair and rebuild these neighborhoods, and we have to invest in them by any means necessary. We have to create opportunities for Section 8 home ownership, side lot development, affordable renting, and home ownership opportunities. We have to create residential co-ops and commercial ones too. Community development strategies that focus on families and their health disparities. We have to put retail back in the corridors, families back in these homes, and hope back in our children's hearts. There are some that don't understand why this must be done, that are concentrating on the present costs and not the cost that has burdened us for decades, nor the cost it has on us now or the growing cost that will multiply if we do nothing. This is why I'm ecstatic that the Municipal Council voted for the agreement to begin moving forward on the state's first land bank that happens to be in the city of Newark. And finally, our success also is a result of our collective efforts with our corporate and anchor institutions. Thanks to the diligent and consistent work of our partners in the private sector, the nonprofit community, and higher ed community, and the Institute for Social Justice for first calling out the 2020 number, we set up a goal to hire 2,020 Newark residents by the year 2020. And I'm happy to report that we went well past our 2020 goals. We actually hit our target 1 year early, and 2,279 Newark residents were hired at some of our major anchor institutions. We learned that we could have actually done a lot more, and we intend on doing that. The great thing about this is that it has begun to affect the culture of the way business is done in our city. People are now actively looking for and recruiting Newark residents for their schools, for employment, and to do business with. NJIT and University Hospital have increased its local hiring by 35% and 9% respectively, just from 2018 to 2019. Rutgers and the Biomedical Health Science Center pledged to hire 220 Newark residents over 3 years, and now double that, and have hired 437, both full and part-time positions, in only 2 years. And the average salary of these new hires at Rutgers is $56,382. In fact, the following corporations have met and exceeded their goals: NJIT, Rutgers, RWJ Barnabas, United Airlines, and PSEG. If you are in the corporate community and your name was not called, even if you are a mid-sized to major employer in this city and you do business in this city, this is what we are doing. You cannot call yourself a Newark-based business if you are not part of Newark 2020. And as wealth becomes more concentrated in the hands of a few in this country, it is up to us who believe in democracy, both politically and economically, that you find a way to help us create equity in this country, and you can start right here in the great city of Newark. I want to thank all the corporations and anchor institutions that collaborated with us. The impact you're delivering in this city will be felt generationally. We applaud you. I also want to call out a few institutions for really moving on the buy part of our strategy. Rutgers University spent about $12 million in Newark in 2019. PSEG exceeded its 2019 internal goal and spent more than $150 million with Newark-based businesses. And Audible got really creative and established Lunch Out Wednesday programs that included over 20 local restaurants and gave their employees a stipend to eat at local businesses. This novel idea has contributed about $500,000 in additional revenue to local businesses and helps us sustain our business community and develop the necessary walking traffic we need to begin to build the downtown we want to see. I also want to thank Newark Alliance and its membership for corporate support during the height of the COVID-19 epidemic. They raised over $5 million to help with COVID relief, for PPE, relief for small businesses, and marketing. And one of the most impactful programs was and is the Newark Working Kitchens. This, led by Audible, PSEG, Panasonic, Fidelco, the New Jersey Devils, and others, activated many of our local restaurants, helps them maintain revenue while providing good, healthy meals to residents that need them. Nearly 500,000 meals have been delivered since the start of this program. And I am also happy to announce 2 initiatives being moved forward under our new Director of Arts and Culture, Fayemi Shakur. The first one is the Art Space and Social Impact Capacity Building Initiative. This initiative provides for 3 to 5 city-owned properties leased per year to qualified local applicants, arts organizations, arts collectives, nonprofits, and community development organizations. They will be allowed to lease this property from the city for $1 for 2 years. They will be able to provide programming there, and after 2 years, get their lease renewed through the municipal council. And on the 5th year, purchase the property at cost based on their first year. The second initiative is called Percent for Arts Funds. This will provide $500,000 to $1 million a year to make available support for small and mid-sized arts organizations and collectives. This money will be made available through tax abatement contributions, developers, foundations, and corporate partners. The Creative Catalyst Fund helped many artists continue to get through COVID, and these initiatives will continue beyond COVID and help our city and others begin to recognize the power of art to social progress and economic sustainability for our city. I'm excited about the things we were able to accomplish for our young people. We've renovated recreation centers and parks all over the city. We've distributed more than 10,000 books this summer through the Mayor's Book Club. And next week at libraries across the city, we will have copies of the autobiography of Malcolm X to commemorate the 95th anniversary of his birth. I am also pleased to announce that Newark was one of the 13 cities selected nationally to partner with the National League of Cities to address the basic needs of local and secondary students. Newark's participation will support a focus on digital access. And lastly, because of our health department and homeless commission, more than 205,000 bed nights have been provided to city's unsheltered population since 2018. 79 previously unsheltered individuals were placed into permanent housing with the help of the Newark Housing Authority, and 3,000 families avoided homelessness through our Emergency Solutions Grant. And during COVID, the health department, under the leadership of Dr. Wade, stood up a hotel and leased that accommodated over 300 homeless residents and supplied them social services as well as 3 meals a day. Which brings me to this. One of the largest projects we are working on now at this moment, because of the combined efforts of the state legislators, this project led by Senator Ruiz, with additional money we will raise from the city's long-term parking tax. This will result in us raising the money to build a walking bridge akin to the High Line Bridge in New York City that would begin at Mulberry Commons Park and run above McCarter Highway, attach itself to Newark Penn Station, and land in the Ironbound. You will be able to leave Penn Station and walk toward the center of the city or towards the city's East Ward. It will connect 2 parts of our city and spur millions of dollars of development around it. The most exciting part of it is that with this funding, we will also build brand new 150-bed homeless shelter, create 100 units of transitional housing for families to help steer them off the road of pervasive homelessness, and 100 units using the Housing First model for the chronically homeless individuals in our city. And I am truly, truly excited about the work we have done, and more importantly, the work we are doing, ready to do, and ready to do, and ready to do. See for yourself. And despite our difficult times, Newark is on a long march forward. We're getting stronger every year, not simply because of the work we are doing in this administration, but because of your engagement, your input, your pushing us, your collective leadership in your block meetings and in your community meetings. Because you are part of the Newark People's Assembly, because you attend police community roundtables, because you do what is necessary to keep our city moving, and because of that, Newark is leading the way. Not just here in New Jersey, but around the country. I am looking forward to what is to come, the expansion of our Newark 2020 program to create more jobs and greater procurement, the opening of Terminal A at the Newark Airport that through our collective efforts will feature local Black and brown businesses at the airport, our guaranteed income pilot, along with about a dozen other mayors across the country, and the Jane Family Institute NYU and Columbia, and Jack Dorsey to raise $5 million to pilot 2021 program for universal basic income. I'm excited about launching our bike and scooter share program and figuring out planning and infrastructure support for biking in our city, not just downtown, but for access across the city. DPW will launch its trash can initiative across the city, promoting healthier and cleaner neighborhoods by providing uniform, durable, and wheeled trash cans to Newark residents along the corridors. I am extremely hopeful about the work the newly formed land bank will be doing and the opportunities it will offer to Newark residents. Many of you participated in the city's auction for the first time and were deterred by the speculators and the high costs. The land bank is designed with you in mind. They have exciting opportunities like Section 8 home ownership, converting renters into owners. The foreclosure fee fund is New Jersey legislation, allows us to require banks to register foreclosed homes and allow us to levy a fee on it. We are recommending that the fee be used to provide relief to residents, renters, and homeowners. Based on our current calculations, we can collect between $750,000 to $1 million in the first year of this program. And as a result of the creation of the Office of Violence Prevention, we are closing the current location of the 1st Precinct, which was the 4th in 1967, when this city went up in flames for 4 days and 26 families lost their loved ones. This precinct will become the headquarters of all of our alternative police strategies and a museum chronicling the history of activism in our city, curated by city historian Junius Williams. We are also going to commission a statue of Harriet Tubman in the Washington Park where the old Christopher Columbus statue stood and rename the park Tubman Square. This is just not window dressing. Newark played an important and integral role in the Underground Railroad, and Harriet Tubman's journeys to freedom led her to our city, many times in that very area, and the state was one of the last to acknowledge the freedom of African people in this country. So it is right and deliberate that we put a statue of Harriet Tubman at Washington Park and name it Tubman Square. Lastly, we are intent and deliberate about making all Black and brown lives matter. We know that all life includes our lives. This is why we have launched our social justice fund, 40 Acres and a Mule. Why? Because the wealth gap in this country is outrageous. But in New Jersey, the wealth gap is worse than the country. White families' median net worth is $352,000. Black families' net worth is $6,100. And for Latinx families, it is $7,300. This exists because of structural inequity and pervasive and intractable racism that has plagued this country since its founding. As a result of stubborn and purposeful, very real problems endemic in our system and a lack of will to address them. This is from generations of families that have grown up in poverty, poor health, inadequate resources for education, poor quality and lack of housing, and decades of being intently locked out of economic growth at the expense of the national GDP and the upward mobility of this country as a whole. We in Newark will lead the way to attempt to not just shine light on this, but mitigate it until reparations come. And to all of our corporate partners, financial institutions, people that love and benefit from Newark, we need your help. We need your investment. We need your money. No more studies, no more policy papers, no more administrative support, no more meetings and retreats, no more excuses. This country, this state, our city has a problem built on white supremacy and intentional inequality. You can't profess to love this city and love us and watch us in despair. Watch our abuelas and our abuelos struggle. Now, in this moment in history, in this time, we need it the most. Don't let this second dissipate and you have not done your part. History will always judge us. It will judge us. It is what we do at this time that will speak for us for generations to come. For years, we have allowed other people to define us, to be self-appointed narrators of our lives. And like the writers of the old Western who always conclude the story with the indigenous people losing, I'm happy today that we are telling our own story and we are writing our own history. And in this version, we win. We have always, our city, our people, we have always been underestimated. We've always been written off. We've always been undervalued, even to the point where we undervalue ourselves, where we expect little from ourselves, from our families, from our neighbors. We always are written last, but today we write ourselves first. But let me remind all of you that David wasn't given the finest sword, a long spear, a shield made of bronze. He was given a rock and a slingshot. Noah wasn't given the power to breathe underwater or fly. He was told to build an ark. And when Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego was put in the furnace, the heat still came on. The temperature still rose. Our character, our leadership will never be measured on our ability to avoid difficulty, pain, and impossible moments. It is how we come out of these moments and what we do when we get to the other side that measures who we are. Our strength, our leadership shines brighter because of what we've been through and how we stand tall during and after, because trouble don't last always. I don't know if you watched the last presidential debate, and I'm praying that tonight's vice presidential debate is different. But it has highlighted how dangerous a moment we are in this history, how precarious and uncertain our future is. It tells me now more than ever that we must vote. We witness narcissism at its height, deliberate and calculated lies for the sake of crushing your opponent, not lifting us up. The debate was clouded with confusion and dismissiveness of a virus that has killed thousands and destabilized our livelihood. A president who took credit for everything that was good and blamed all his failings on others. The leadership we saw or lack of is why we are stuck in this moment. Racists being told to stand back and stand by as a wink to white supremacy. I have to say, Mr. Trump, I'm from Newark. Take a look at what's happening in New Jersey. We have a Democratic governor. Even better, we have a Democratic mayor that actually believes in democracy. We have fought this virus responsibly, and because we fought it responsibly, we are opening up our economy cautiously, but opening up indeed. We need our businesses, our jobs. Yes, we want our children to play sports, our parks open, our libraries, our museums. We want our kids to go back to school. We need services delivered and people cared for. But we also cherish our life and, more importantly, the lives of our neighbors. And we will open up when it is safe to open up and open up cautiously. We are going to continue opening up because we are continuing to fight this virus responsibly. We saved possibly hundreds of lives and distributed monies when barely had money to work on ourselves. We stopped evictions and prevented layoffs. We fought the ugliness of white supremacy and managed to wake up without our city burning. Protesters sat in the middle of Broad and Market Street in civil disobedience, and police chiefs from across the county took a knee here in Newark in a persona of Colin Kaepernick, showing their disgust for the murder of George Floyd and signaling that white supremacy must end. We know in Newark that white supremacy is wrong, that fascism is evil, and we have no problem condemning it. The Klan is an illegal organization in Newark, and so are their sympathizers. Your narratives are proving false right here in Newark. Every moment we wake up, we make you a liar. We have arrested less people and reduced crime at the same time. We embrace all of our residents, documented and undocumented alike. We believe all Newark families contribute to the good of our community. We are growing jobs, yet still fighting for a better and cleaner environment. We don't shrink in crisis. We don't close our eyes during difficult times. We count on each other. We fall back on our neighbors. We use data, and we believe in science. And we protect the right for people to love who they want to love, to see themselves as beautiful, to worship their own faith, and speak in multiple languages. We believe in democracy here, and I'm not running for your job, Mr. President, but I will surely be voting for the next person to be in that seat on November the 3rd, and I'm mailing my ballot in and making my mark because Medgar Evers died in his wife's arms, because Emmett Till's body still haunts the bottom of the Tallahatchie River, and because it is my right and my duty, it is my responsibility to not just those that came before me, but for millions and millions that will come after me. And finally, Mr. President, because Newark must remain strong, and by the grace of God get stronger. And we in this time, on this day, will continue to lead the way we know how. We will lead now and many years after you are gone. God bless this state, God bless this city, and God bless America.
A lot has changed since the pandemic came. In March, we were told to go home, and at 8 p.m., we watched our beloved city close. We stood still, hoping to understand if our Newark would ever be the same again. And in all that wonder, the sun still found its way in. We are a city who responded first and stayed up last. A city of mothers, Uber drivers, a city of poets, entrepreneurs, teachers, barbers, and survivors. Here, dignity is not unfound. A city of nurses, a city who turned its church parking lots into COVID-19 testing grounds. A city who gives supplies and groceries to their needy and ill. A city who commissions art as a testament to reflect and echo what is true and what is real. A city that said we are Black, Latinx, Dominican, Puerto Rican, African, and Haitian to own. A city who said that as long as we got enough food, your children are welcomed in our home. A city that did not have pity, but protest, patience, practice, and prayer. And though the journey may last longer, we will forever be Newark, and we will forever be Newark stronger.